these kinds of entertainments, rodeos, bullfights, zoos, aquariums, circuses, all of these performances. And we have a sense that the animals may not be willing participants, but how could it be wrong if this has been around for centuries? How could it be wrong if it's family oriented and educational? And so we go along with it with a little bit of discomfort. And I think that, part of the work that we're doing and part of what other kind of projects like humane education do is to create space where we can feel that discomfort and talk about it. But we are worried that it'll actually bring some great discomfort. So let's say we acknowledge our discomfort from going to see performing animals at zoos or aquariums. Well, if we feel that, that might call into question our very goodness and the wholesomeness of our traditions and our families. It's scary stuff.
Hi, I'm Carol Saunders, host of the Spiritual Forum, where I have extraordinary conversations exploring the vast realms of spiritual living. If you're on a healing, learning, awakening, or intertransformational journey, this podcast will support you. The personal stories, wisdom, and insight shared here will inspire you and give you hope. Step into your divine nature and welcome to the forum.
Welcome, everyone, to the Spiritual Forum. I'm so glad you're here. It's a fabulous day in Wisconsin. I still kind of have this head cold thing. Don't worry about me. From your standpoint, it may look like I've had this for weeks and weeks, but I've just been doing a lot of recording in the same week. It just happens I got a little nasally voice, so you'll have to bear with me, and I appreciate it. My guest today is Jo-Anne McArthur, and she's an award-winning photojournalist and the founder of We Animals. She has visited over 60 countries to document our fraught relationship with animals, and she's the author of 3 books. We Animals, published in 2014, Captive, published in 2017, and Hidden, Animals in the Anthropocene in 2020. Jo-Anne is the subject of the acclaimed Canadian documentary, The Ghosts in Our Machine, and her photographs have received accolades from Wildlife Photographer of the Year, Nature Photographer of the Year, Big Picture, Picture of the Year International, and Global Peace Award, and many others. Welcome, Jo-Anne.
Hey, Reverend Carol, it's wonderful to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
It's so nice to have you. I want to start by just setting the stage that we're going to be talking about your amazing work as a photojournalist. And people must say, well, what's spiritual about that? Because my podcast is spiritually centered. And to me, the spiritual path, my podcast is about very much walking a very practical spiritual path. And to me, it's really about awakening to reality, to truth, to our true divine nature, to our connection and our interconnectedness with all others, to the truth that we are all one. And Jo-Anne's photojournalism brings the gap, the gap to our attention. And so that's the spiritual nature of this podcast. So Jo-Anne, is there anything you want to share before we dig into talking about you and your work?
There isn't, but I'm so looking forward to talking about the things that I care about the most, which are animals and telling stories and photojournalism and changing the world through stories and through kindness and through reaching people. So let's dive in.
Okay, let's dive in. We do change the world through stories. We've always been
Yes.
storytellers, and that is really how we see things differently. So, first, let's talk about what photojournalism is and actually what the work you do.
Sure. Yes. I think that photojournalism is a vital piece of the puzzle when it comes to raising awareness, changing anything, whether it's at the one-to-one personal level or whether it's at a bigger scale, like eventually changing laws and policy. And photojournalism has a long and glorious, and sometimes inglorious history of going to the front lines of where there is suffering, where there are events, people, and animals who are hidden, and their stories need to be told. And so photojournalism is often aligned with conflict photography. And it's very much about the human condition. And at We Animals, my organization, we actually decided to create a new genre of photojournalism. Who does that? Well, I guess we're doing that. And it's very simple, and we call it animal photojournalism. That might seem like insultingly overly simple, but the reason we did it is because photojournalism is by and large about the human condition. And wildlife photography or animal photography is about certain species of animals. People never understood what I did. They'd hear, that I go to factory farms, I'm a photojournalist, I do investigative work, and they'd say, "Oh, okay, like yeah, you must really like cats and dogs." Or, "Oh, I get it. You go to Africa to photograph, the elephants." And no, that's not what it is. So, photojournalism, human condition, animal photography didn't quite fit. So we call it animal photojournalism, which documents everybody. It includes everybody, and we have a longer description, but yeah, we wanted to add some clarity to what we do, and we called it animal photojournalism. We made the definition about 6 years ago, and it's been interesting. A lot of people call themselves animal photojournalists now, or that they do animal photojournalism. It's different. It's now understood to be different from like conservation photography, wildlife photography, and so on. So it's some roots are happening on that, and I look forward to continuing to evolve what we're doing in animal photojournalism. APJ for short. That's a mouthful. Animal photojournalism, animal photojournalism. So we call it APJ.
Well, I have to say, I have your book, We Animals, and I was to be honest, I was a little bit reluctant to order it because I've seen so many horrific pictures of factory farming and slaughterhouses and things like that. And I was like, do I really need to see more horrific pictures? But what you capture is so different than that to me. You capture a moment that's so different than just like animal abuse. To me, you capture the soul of the animal. I don't know where your belief system is, but what I see often is the reflection of me in the animal's eyes. And it's that moment that you're able to get. And just as an example, there's a picture that I really have a hard time not continuing to look at. It's a rodeo, and there's a calf that's been roped. She's very young. She's a baby. I can't even believe I used to watch this as a preteen, you know. I can't even believe I lived at Houston at the time, and I remember going to the rodeo. I was like, how did I even do that? I was very disturbed by the animals in the stalls, but way up in the seats, I wasn't as disturbed from the quote show. And what you show is this calf, and there's like a wrangler, I guess, and he's kind of has an indifferent look, and that this little calf's eyes are just terrified, you know, just terrified. And there's something in that moment that makes me go, "What the heck are we doing?" So, I guess I'm just pointing out to who's listening, the difference between animal photojournalism as I see it, and, taking pictures of animals is you capture these moments that are the in between of humans and animals and the soul of the animal, and often the complete indifference of the human.
You really get it. Thank you for deep diving into my work and looking at what is reaching you. I really appreciate that. And that's the goal of what we're doing. Um, there are a lot of pictures of animals in the world that aren't saying enough. And we work really hard in APJ to make connections between the animal and us. If the animal is looking into the camera, they are looking at it, anyone who's looking at the picture. But it's very, very important in photojournalism and animal photojournalism to show systems, to show not just the person within the system, but why is this happening? We want these photos to hold up a mirror. And it sounds like you had that experience with that image of the calf at the rodeo because it caused you to ask questions. And that's what we want. And in that photograph, there's a sign in the background at the rodeo that says the greatest show on earth. And
Yeah. Yeah.
that's
It's like, really?
yeah. And when you're in the audience And many of us are in the audience because, this is what people do, and we're told this is tradition, this is culture, this is fun, and we're not thinking critically. So when photographers position themselves in a certain angle to capture a number of things at once, which an audience member may not be able to do, they can see the victim, someone innocent, in this case, a baby. We see a posturing man, big, chest, walking away because he's just tossed this calf to the ground and the calf roping, and then the background, the greatest show on earth. And so when those elements come together, it causes us to pause and reflect. And that's why the images are effective. And that's why we are working so hard at We Animals to elevate photography to tell those stories. It's not just a good image, it's a story. And some of our best images tell a whole story in one frame. And I think that picture is quite like that.
Yeah, and many of them are. Like, you'll show children at the zoo, just or aquarium or something like that.
Mm.
These things that we're so conditioned to do because, our parents took us, or look, my big sister took me, and now I've got a kid, I'm gonna do that. And there's this, I mean, it's humiliating to me looking back that I took my kids to the circus. It's like, what was I thinking? Now that I have the awareness that I have. But at the time, it seemed like another greatest show on earth. And incidentally, the rodeo, only rodeo I've ever been to, I was like 13 years old, and it was kind of a date. It was a date. His parents drove us there.
Yeah.
And so to me, my mind was on all sorts of other things, being an awkward preteen and all that. But because I remember it so well, that experience, I know that I knew something was wrong. It's not like this guy was so dreamy. That's why I remember it. I have so many days in my life that I've lived that I have no recollection
Yeah.
of, but that evening I remember, and I think I remember because uh, there was a disconnect that I was just beginning to kind of awaken around, but I didn't know what to do with it.
And
And then your photo brought me right back to that day.
I'm so glad I'm so glad that it did. And I think that many of us feel some discomfort around these kinds of entertainments, rodeos, bullfights, zoos, aquariums, circuses, all of these performances. And we have a sense that the animals may not be willing participants. But how could it be wrong if this has been around for centuries? How could it be wrong if it's family oriented and educational? And so we go along with it with a little bit of discomfort. And I think that, part of the work that we're doing and part of what other kind of projects like humane education do is to create space where we can feel that discomfort and talk about it. But we we are worried that it'll actually bring some great discomfort. So let's say we acknowledge our discomfort from going to see performing animals at zoos or aquariums. Well, if we, feel that, that might call into question our very goodness and the wholesomeness of our traditions and our families. It's scary stuff, and I think that we have to acknowledge that for people. It's a heavy lift, and I think I really like guiding people in the right direction. If you're going to think critically about the turkey on your table at Thanksgiving, which is meant to represent family and goodness and gratitude, it's okay to question
Thanksgiving, yeah.
it. It's and like the rodeos and the circuses, it's okay to question those things. And if you participate in those things, you're not a bad person. It doesn't have to go there. We're always so worried about, I'm a good person, so everything I do must be good. But we need to create space for each other to discuss these things and talk about the evolution of cultures and traditions. And those things change by their very nature. And we just need to give space for that and support each other through it. Something that I don't like about what some activists do is shame people very easily. For the turkey on their table at Christmas and Thanksgiving and so on. But just help educate people and help talk them through it. I believe that changes happen that way. Mm.
Yeah, I remember watching your, presentation. Was it Cambridge? Was it Cambridge? Yeah, Cambridge. And one of the things that I was so moved by is your compassion for the people that are in the middle of this. I mean, they may be doing horrible things and they may be completely indifferent, but you still had a compassion for the person. You weren't like, look at these horrible, awful people. And I don't think we're going to make any change as long as we're pointing fingers outside of ourselves, saying you're horrible and I'm not. But to be able to still have compassion, recognizing the whole system that everybody's been brought up in.
Yeah, and it's the S word, the systems. I want us to focus on these, the traditions, the cultures, the systems, how we keep animals, how we keep them within systems, how we protect cultural and traditional systems. We all take part in it. You know, even the most hardcore animal rights vegans, it's really hard to not take part in some kind of harm. So we need to be aware of that. And something that I want to point out, you mentioned the children in my pictures at zoos. Well, it's particularly important for me to show the system of the zoo. An example that I'll give is children, a bunch of children who are antagonizing a jaguar on the other side of a plexiglass. And you can see the jaguar is like trying to get at them with their mouth open. And you can see that they live in a fairly small enclosure. It is interesting in photojournalism when it's ethical and when it's not to show people, especially innocent people like children who have not given their consent, to be portrayed in this way. But I include people in my pictures because we are the ones going to the zoos. I don't want to shame the children because their parents brought them there. It's a very normal thing for kids to do is go to a zoo. But I do want us to look at the image and connect with the children and see ourselves coming back to, holding up a mirror. That's what these images are. When people see my image of these children antagonizing the animal, I want them to think about maybe they've done that or they've seen other children do that. Maybe they've just gone to a zoo and I want them to rethink it. So that's an interesting thing to always grapple with in photojournalism. Are we giving dignity to all of the individuals within the frame? And if we aren't, is it okay in order to further the bigger message that we're trying to get across about human behavior and systems change?
Yeah, I mean, what is the bigger message? What do you see? I mean, I have my own answer to this question, but what do you see as the importance of the animal-human interface and connection?
Well, as we get older, as we grow out of childhood, where we tend to be a little bit more connected to animals, we grow a little colder. We maybe have thought about the animals in the zoos or the animals we're eating, but we grow a little, colder to the animals in order to just go about our day to day using animals in the way that everyone typically does. And we aren't taught about animal sentience and intelligence. We aren't taught about how incredibly complex animals are, and we aren't really taught about what justice is for all species who are sentient. I fundamentally believe and know that if someone is sentient, if someone can experience a range of pains and sadnesses and happiness and anxieties and complex emotions like jealousy, and even if they can't, even if their emotions are quite basic, these are animals who want to live and are invested in their own autonomy and peace and safety. And that's what all animals are trying to achieve. And I believe that we don't have a right to cause them harm if they can experience suffering. And I think that's the premise of all of my work at We Animals. It's showing that animals are sentient, getting us to connect with them, but also showing all of the incredibly harmful systems we keep animals in so that we can reflect and reduce animal suffering by reducing the amount of suffering we're causing. Yeah. So I'll
Yeah, and
pause
I
there.
I I think it connects to us too. It's like to me, there's this thought under the idea. or under the practice of you are here for me. Like I can exploit you in whatever way I want. There's a thought under that's okay. And so with animals, we do it for, lab testing, we do it for entertainment, food, clothing, all of that kind of stuff, and none of it's necessary anymore. So the idea that you are here for me,
Mhm.
that translates into humanity too. It's like that it's that idea that needs to be eradicated. As long as we think that it's okay to rope this calf, it's okay to keep this penguin in a tiny little cage. It's okay for me to just pull the skin off of this animal because I want a certain coat or whatever. As long as I have that thought, it also translates into how we treat each other as humans. Now, I'm not saying that's necessarily the motivation why we should be kinder to animals, but it is all interconnected because I do believe we are all interconnected. So if we want a world that is peaceful and merciful, and if we want people to be merciful towards us, we have to be merciful. And I have no idea. I didn't talk to you at all about what your spirituality, if anything, is. But to me, there's so much about you know. I mean, blessed are the merciful, blessed are the peacekeepers. All of these tenets in Christianity and other religions about kindness and compassion. You just can't cut yourself off from animals and say it doesn't apply to them.
I agree with you. And I appreciate that the golden rule, do unto others, is quite pan-religious. I think a lot of people can understand that. So whether you are, um, you know, Christian or Muslim, or whether you feel an affinity, a spirituality with the earth and with others, it's it's the golden rule. I think is something that we should all remember to bring to the fore and to live every day. If you don't want it to happen to you, then maybe you shouldn't do it to others. And it's quite possible. There's a sanctuary in Australia called Edgar's Mission, and their motto is simple and beautiful. It's if we can live happy and healthy lives without harming others, then why wouldn't we?
Yeah, it's a no-brainer, and yet it's like we're like, "Duh." It's so interesting how we're able to live in cognitive dissonance and how we're okay to just block off these species or these countries, whatever it is. We're able to just block these things off and live happily here. And don't tell me about what's going on over there. But you bring this to the forefront. So it's like now it's not behind closed doors now. Let's look behind the door of the laboratory or the zoo or the aquarium or the furrier and let's see what really is going on there. And my heart breaks for all of the things you must see. Could you tell us a few more stories that might particularly stand out in your mind of your photojournalism work?
Yeah, the work has taken me to about 60 countries, and I'm quite voracious for collecting stories. It's mm, it's very interesting to me to get to be in a position where I cease to exist almost, and I get to just absorb the world around me and be a part of it and witness suffering or witness acts of compassion. And so people who like that kind of experience should try photojournalism. You get to immerse in the world of others, and then you get to do something about it too. That's what I love about photojournalism is when you take those pictures, that's not where the work ends, it's where it begins, really. That's like, you've done part one, then there's part two, and it's getting those images out into the world where they can resonate with people, where you can share the story. And there's so many ways of telling stories. So yeah, I've met, chimpanzees recovering from research. I've met bears who have been in bear bile farms and who have been rescued from there. I've met lots of compassionate people doing every kind of work. And in fact, at We Animals, we did a project called Unbound about women on the front lines of animal advocacy worldwide, because we found that men were often in a position of power at NGOs, or they are the spokespeople for animal advocacy. And so we end up featuring over 150 women, whether they were veterinarians or entrepreneurs or, grassroots activists. So I have been very fortunate to collect a lot of stories and share a lot of stories. Um, I'll pick one. Um, I met a bear in or freed from a bear bile farm by Free the Bears. And you know what? This was either in Cambodia or Laos, and I can't believe I'm forgetting now. I think it was in Cambodia. And this bear had a huge sanctuary space to roam around in with the other bears who'd been rescued, but he was indoors and he was pacing back and forth and he was looking very sad. He was missing a bunch of teeth. But he was in there because he really liked people. And that was sweet. I Something that was really shocking about this bear is that he had been kept in a bear bile farm in a cage for 4 years, where his gallbladder was tapped for bile, which is used in some traditional Chinese medicine. He started producing less bile and they were going to kill him, but before they did that, they further abused him by cutting off his front paws for bear paw soup, which at the time was still considered a delicacy in Vietnam. He survived that and he was rescued. So here is this bear at a sanctuary. I wish I knew his name. And he's pacing around on his back legs and he's looking awfully sad. And he comes to the bars to look through at me. And I ask one of the staff about him, and they said, "Oh, he looks sad, but he's actually a really happy bear. And he's actually what he's doing now is just begging for his favorite treat, which is pineapple jam." And wow, I got too close to the bars. Bears are big, strong animals, and they're very fast. And I was taking this picture of his beautiful face, which looked so sad, and it was through the bars, and you think this is a terrible situation, but he was rescued, and I got closer and closer. And what he did was he actually reached through the bars quickly, and he pulled me against the bars. And he could have bitten me, and he could have hurt me, but he didn't. And in that moment, I was held by this bear in a bear hug, but I was being held by his stumps. And he let go, and the moment was over. The moment was only a few seconds long, but a lot happened in that few seconds for me. And I was shocked at just how friendly he was, given all that we had put him through. Like, what an example of resilience, an animal with chutzpah and curiosity and joie de vivre, even. And he is one of the many animals who remind me every single day that they deserve to be fought for, they deserve to be protected. And so I carry him in my heart. I carry many of the animals I've met in my heart every single day. And, they keep me going despite the work being so hard.
I can see that. It is shocking that these animals who've experienced so much abuse can be so seemingly forgiving and so still wanting to connect. And I think they have a divine spark. I think they have souls. I think, they are just looking back at us. To me, I see the face of God in animals. Again, I'm getting kind of on the spiritual, but I see that. And yet so many of us are just indifferent and have been raised that they're just some kind of thing. So surely you've seen horrific, awful things too. I'm very interested in how you manage your work emotionally. I don't think I could be on those front lines like you are, where you're actually going into some of these darker places and seeing the reality and capturing it. So how do you keep yourself constituted in a way that you can keep moving forward?
Well, I sure as heck didn't know how to do that for quite some time. I'm someone who can really power through a lot of brutality, and I'm motivated to move quickly and do a lot and push through and ignore my own feelings. So, first bit of advice, maybe the only bit of advice I will say, is know thyself. Know your boundaries and your limits. And I believe that I'm quite a self-aware person, but in those early days of investigations, I wasn't self aware enough to know that I was driving myself down into traumatic stress. It got to a point where I was waking up in the morning, my first thoughts were of a pig in a gestation crate or a chicken in a battery cage. And I have a tremendous joie de vivre, but I was getting pretty depressed. And I hadn't been observing myself closely enough to know what was happening. And so I had therapy, which was wonderful. And I've had therapy a number of times, thankfully, since, in the last 20 years, in order to help me cope with what I see and what I do. And that took practice. You don't just recover from mm, PTSD overnight. And you also, I find it hard to be vigilant with myself and know when to self care. And I think a lot of people are like that. We're busy, we're distracted, we have all these goals, and we might want to look after our child before we look after our own needs or our partners, and so on. And actually, this happened to me again fairly recently, and it's not because I was on the front line with animals, but it's because I was just simply working so hard building wee animals. And I've gone from being a freelance photographer doing whatever I want to someone who has a very serious job at my desk for many hours. And I've just been pushing through and pushing through because of course I am, because I'm moving this great project forward. I'm helping my teammates go forward and they're helping me. And then I found that I was getting very flat. And then I was found that I was faking it in terms of, joy and happiness. And then I had to admit that I was burnt out. And that was a surprise. I was not paying close attention to my well-being. Okay, so here we go with some more therapy and coping tools and mechanisms so that I can be self-aware and understand what my needs and my limits are. You know, I'm someone who's really proud of having no limits and boundaries. I can do everything, but I can't. So I've had to
I get that.
how to face that. Okay, I need a certain amount of sleep and so on. So know thyself, give yourself what you need so that you can be a kind and resilient person out in the world every day.
Yeah, self-care. Take care of yourself first. Put the oxygen and mask on yourself first. It's really hard to get sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah, it is.
I get that. I'm also that person. It's like, nothing can stop me. Keep going, going, going.
And
And then my body just picks me up and slaps me down.
I turned 49 this year, so I'm in my 50th year, and this is a great time for reflection. Any time is a great time of reflection, but I'm really doubling down on that this year. I don't want to mess around anymore. I don't want to burn out. I want to be able to, be resilient, and I want to be happy. I have this one life. It's such a gift to have this life. And and I deserve to live it joyfully, and I deserve to not be thinking about gestation crates in the morning, and I mean like pigs in gestation crates in the morning. And so I can work strongly and diligently for animals while also caring for myself if I know what boundaries I need in order to continue doing that.
I I really hope I can get you to be a featured speaker at my retreat someday because this is where we all struggle. We all struggle with that. How do we be advocates without burning out? Or how do we live in a state of awareness
Mm.
without being depressed? And I always remind people, because I'm going to bring it back to consciousness. Remind people that we're all connected in this consciousness, and if we're finding ourselves operating at a really low level, we're doing nothing really for the animals or anyone else, including ourselves. And so if we can vibrate or operate at a higher level of consciousness, which I would say you call joy, that overall impacts the soup that we're swimming in, which will have a better effect on animals and the animal movement than if we're all sad and depressed and thinking constantly about gestation crates. I too was that way. I couldn't sleep for months in the middle of the night because I knew that's when the slaughterhouses were going. That's when the lines are going, and I would just be awake thinking about the pigs, and it's like it was not helping the pigs, and it was not helping me, and I had to manage that.
But I'm also one who feels very strongly that we cannot cut ourselves off from reality. We have to be willing to look at it squarely,
Mhm.
i- squarely, and also be able to find our joy.
I'd love to add to what you're saying. I have a visual. Many people have heard me talk about this, but it's been very helpful in being in my coping mechanisms. And it's about being mindful of what you're thinking about and not just participating in your thoughts, but observing your thoughts and deciding when you're going to serve them tea and have a chat with them, or when you're going to keep the back door open and just let them, be on their way because you're not giving them the time of day. And my Buddhist teacher, Tashi Nima, taught me that. And it's my favorite visual. Joe, don't serve that thought tea. You're serving it tea right now. It's taking up this na 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 na, space in your mind because you're giving it attention. And so, what I learned to do, and I will always continue to relearn to do, is live in two tracks. This is one of these tracks is where animal suffering is happening every moment of every day, like you mentioned. The when the slaughterhouses are going, like it's endless, and you're thinking about them then. So there are two tracks. There's like the animal abuse. There's the earth suffering. There's all the destruction that's happening, and I'm over here and I'm going along, and I over here is where I keep my happy life, like my path that I'm walking, and it's parallel to all that suffering. But I can hop over here to this path to look at it, to analyze it, to think about it, to take action. But I don't have to live over here. I can live alongside it and just keep going. It's right there, and know I can go back to it and come out of it when I need to. And I have visually picked myself up. Oh, Joe, you're thinking about pigs and gestation crates. You're over here. So come on over here. This is where the joy is and the peace and the calm and the rest. Come on over here. You can go back over here when you need to. Pick what I'm thinking about. Be deliberate, be mindful, and so that I can switch things off. It doesn't mean I'm disconnected and disengaged. It just means I'm affording myself peace when I need it, which is a lot. That's in order to keep going, in order to prevent burnout.
I love that. That's really good advice, and I think it's very practical and helpful. And we can always pick which road we're walking on, and and we don't have to be depressed all the time or ignorant all the time. I am curious. I know when I look through your book, and the book I have is this one. I don't know if it's going to show up. We Animals.
Mhm.
Um, you also educate people. Like you'll show some kind of picture, for example, like the one that comes to mind is the picture of the lemurs and the zoo, and you make a point that even if the space becomes bigger in the zoo, that often the animals still occupy a very small space, and all of these people are watching them, and so I can tell that you're part of what you're doing is you're telling the story, you're capturing an image of the story. And I know maybe not in that particular one, but I also know you have conversations with people. And I'm wondering about some of those conversations you may have with people, whether it's somebody at the zoo or in a test facility or at the rodeo or whatever. Do you do you have anything that you can share with the human interface with another human who may be in this kind of indifferent, blind exploitation of animals? Have you ever had conversations where something comes out of that, where either you think that you sparked an idea in their mind, or maybe not?
Mhm. I find it hard to have these conversations well. People might feel very challenged very quickly by a stranger. But one thing that I have done recently, I was at the New York State Fair 2 summers ago, where they have a dairy cow birthing station. Now it's unbelievable to me that they will induce these cows to labor in front of hundreds of people. It's like a little stadium, and they have no privacy. And we watch the cows give birth. It's very noisy. The megaphones, the dogs barking, the people, you know, talking and shouting and kids running around. And people go to this year after year, and it's like, the miracle of life. And then as soon as the baby is born, the mother licks the calf, for 5 minutes, and then they take the calf away and put a little pink or blue bow around the calf. And they're, the mom's bellowing to the other side of the room where the calves are. And we're told to experience this in a way that's like, wow, farming is amazing. Isn't the miracle of life amazing? And I did sit in the audience quite a bit, filming, photographing the people and their experience. And I would say, what do you think? And a woman said, like, oh, it's the miracle of life. I come here year after year. It's just so beautiful. And I said, oh, I just feel so sad. I just feel so sad. Look at that mom now. That's it. You know, that's it. Because I'm not, I'm not, I think that challenges her, I think that
Yeah,
it,
that's a seed.
it's a seed. It's a seed. And some people will be more talented than I am at engaging in different ways and asking questions and maybe saying like, well, don't you think it's sad? Yeah, but that's not my skill. I'm a pretty soft touch person. So
I think that's I don't know, maybe that's soft touch, but I think that opens up a possibility. I personally have made huge changes in my life with somebody having just a really soft touch like that. Sometimes maybe even just a look, it's like, what are they thinking? I need to look into this. And and in fact, I remember once when I was a vegetarian, before I knew about veganism, before I knew that there was cruelty in eggs and dairy. I was living in La La Land like most of us, thinking these animals are just producing this stuff and we're just here to gather it. That was my reality, and I wasn't killing anybody. I was just
yeah.
I thought I was doing great. And for decades, because I was vegetarian when I was 15.
Wow.
It's pretty young, back when nobody was. Anyway, I remember once having dinner with somebody and them saying, "Oh, are you vegan or vegetarian?" I remember saying something like, I said, "I'm really just, I'm really just concerned about not killing animals, so I'm vegetarian. So I don't participate in killing animals." And that person didn't say anything to me, and she certainly wasn't vegan or vegetarian, but she just kind of gave me this look like, "Hmm, really?" Just a little look. And I'm like, "Does she know something I
Yeah.
don't?" And that was enough, not enough to turn me vegan, but enough to go, "There's something I don't know."
Mhm.
And then the next thing happened, and then
Mhm.
the next thing happened, and then boom. So I do think things like, "Wow, this makes me sad." It really opens up something in that woman to think, "Why was she sad?"
Yeah.
You know?
That's great that someone positively opened the door for you in that way. I think that's really neat. And had that person even said, actually, I think animals are killed in dairy. Like, the mom gets killed around 6 years old when she's spent, and the cows become veal. The calves become veal, and she could have said it. And when we say things in a interesting or
Yeah.
factual
Yeah.
way instead of a shameful way, that's
Right.
more my approach.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. I think we are in a slow and sloggy awakening. Like one step forward, three steps back, but I don't see. Well, let me just ask you before I share
Sure.
my thoughts. What is your vision? Do you have an optimistic vision for the world? What do you see as possible, given the reality
Yeah.
that you see through your camera lens constantly?
Well, I think that whether or not I have an optimistic or a pessimistic view of what will happen, I don't focus on that. I focus on what I can do every day to make a difference. I look at when I have been unkind and I change that and I apologize or I do better. I look at what kind of activism I can do in the day to day through my work. And I'm fortunate that my work is activism at We Animals.
Yeah.
But if it weren't, I would just be thinking about, well, how can I make this a better world today through small or larger acts? So that is more important to me than how I'm feeling day to day, week to week about my optimism and my pessimism, which is also influenced by how tired I am or, what politicians are in power at the moment and so on. And that's what I encourage other people to do as well, is like one step at a time and championing people who are, making small and big changes every day.
I think that is really, really, really good advice because you're you're firmly placing your awareness in the now.
Mm.
That's the only thing that's happening, you know. Even when we have visions for the future, which I do, because I do believe we're going to all wake up, and it's, but but that even that conversation I just had in my own mind has put me in outside of the present moment into this future state. And so I'm either dreaming or I have anxiety
Yeah.
or whatever. And so what you're doing is you're saying, look, what's in front of me right now? And what's in front of me right now that I can make a positive step forward for myself, be kinder, more compassionate in all of my interactions, whether it be with animals or through my camera lens or the people or my loved ones around me and who I just, cut off in the freeway
Yeah.
or whatever. That what can we do in this moment to add to the kindness in the world? And I would say like the consciousness of the world. And that's really all we can do. And so your focus is in a really good place.
It helps me. Yeah, I think that in earlier days, I was more focused on, oh my God, we need to achieve animal justice. And like,
Yeah.
oh, how big picture, no, no, no. But that was exhausting to me.
Yeah.
Of
Yeah.
course, it's my
Why
goal.
aren't we there
Of
yet?
course, my goal is, kindness for all. But yeah, day at a
Yeah.
time.
Yeah. Yeah, right. Can you tell us about We Animals? Is that just the organization through which you do your animal photojournalism, or is it something else? Is that something bigger?
Yes, and I like that that question follows what I just said, because though I put one foot in the front of the other every day, we do have, a grand plan, and we do have long-term strategy. So We Animals was a personal project for about 15 years where I was out in the world documenting stories that needed to be shared about animals, but I wanted to get more strategic about the reach. Um, I needed more people on the team. I also wanted on a team, and so We Animals the project became We Animals the nonprofit organization officially in 2019, and it was very important for me to get those pictures out into the world where they belonged, not sitting on my hard drives. And so it started with creating a archive that anyone can use free of charge. Anyone can use my images free of charge if they're doing animal advocacy. And that was important. A lot of people were asking me for my images, and I'd say, well, I can send it to you in 2 months when I'm home from Africa, and so on. And we wanted more reach to the media, more partnerships, and I wanted to give everything away for free. So you have to fundraise for that. And We Animals has grown and grown. So we have a communications department, we have operations, we have fundraising, and we have our incredible stock site, which is a wonderful resource for anyone helping animals. We have over 40,000 videos and photos now. That is free, as I've mentioned. And we give assignments globally. We have 170 photographers now. It's not just me. Sorry, over 180 now. So it's about like 12 or 13 staff, 180 photographers, and it's a machine now. And we pick our assignments strategically. We look at the needs of the animal advocacy movement. Where do they need images? Of what species do they need images? Which animals are underrepresented, like aquatic life? It's really hard to connect in stories, photos, videos with fish, for example. And so we need better stories of fish and aquatic life. So that's more of a focus. We have geographic focuses as well. We want to help mentor more photojournalists in Asia and Latin America. So it's a whole machine now, and I'm very proud of the team. We have people who are very passionate about working there and working on this piece of the puzzle, which is visuals. We need visuals in the world. People may not read 1,000 words or 10,000 words in an essay, but an image or a story can reach people very quickly. And so we're very happy to be contributing that piece of the puzzle when it comes to advocacy and animal liberation eventually.
Yes, yes. And I love the name, We Animals. Was that easy for you to name?
I love that you asked that because naming can be very difficult, but that name came to me in a split second while I was observing a chained up monkey, and I thought I should do a broad project on animals. And I was like, it's going to be called We Animals because we are all animals. That was a simple one. Naming Captive, the book, was difficult. Naming our book Hidden Animals in the Anthropocene was difficult. And hey, for anyone out there who wants to help us name our stories of change and progress, we need a really great title for that series that we want to do, which is about stories of compassion, evolution, change, progress. It's beautiful. It's exciting. So, and you write to me at info@weanimals.org if you have a great title. I mean, we have talked about a great title with AI and other people for quite some time, and we haven't landed anything that's like
I
super
haven't landed that one yet.
original and poignant and yeah.
Catchy and
and
I
hasn't been
love
used a
that.
million times already. Yeah.
Right, right, right. I do love We Animals because it does remind us that we are a we, we are a we. We are all connected. We are all animals. There's humans are animals. We are animals. And
That's right.
I know that I have two pregnant daughters right now, and there's nothing that makes you remember that you're an animal more than, lactating breasts. You're like, wow, I'm an animal.
No
I
kidding.
remember that with my 3 girls. But anyway, we're gonna be going through that again pretty soon.
Wow, that's exciting.
We are animals. Yeah. Yeah, it is. It is. Oh gosh, I forgot my next question.
Oh, take a moment to look at your notes. Yeah,
Take a
go ahead.
moment. Oh, I know. I know. I wanted to ask you because you've been to 60 countries. That is a lot of countries. And I know that it's probably not fair to say, to ask you to kind of measure or judge, but I'm curious. Are you just seeing generally the same kind of indifference or exploitation towards animals across all countries? Or are you seeing, did you see any country that perhaps looked like they were a little more evolved than the rest of us?
There is incredible cruelty in every country. Part of why I
Yeah.
want We Animals to be international is so that fewer people can say, oh, this doesn't happen in my backyard, or we are a very evolved country, or that only happens in those countries. And so we
Yeah.
have proof in over 100 countries now that there is intense cruelty, whether it's at the personal level or whether it's at the factory farming level, whether it's the number of animals in fur farms, animals in labs. um, we, abuse all different kinds of species, and here in Canada, we might be appalled that people eat dogs in other countries and kill them for food, but we're bashing baby seals over the head, for their fur. It's really important for us all to know that things are pretty bad everywhere, and also the systems that we are creating for factory farming. I'm seeing those globally now. When I started going to factory farms over 15 years ago, these massive systems were in places like the U.S. and Sweden and or the global north, but we're seeing these massive industries now in countries who couldn't afford them before, and they're very proud to be developing in this way in order to mass produce animals for consumption, but not a great way to be going.
Yeah, I've seen like these multi high buildings like in China
Hog
of
hotels.
pigs. Yes. Oh,
Yeah,
man.
they're built almost 20 floors high now. These are massive apartment building complexes that are meant to facilitate ease of cleaning and feeding and killing. So yeah, hog hotels. So every nation needs much improvement. There are countries that have better welfare laws, but there's still plenty of abuse of animals in labs and farms and so on in those countries. So One of the things is we need all countries to have much, much better welfare laws, but we also need people to reduce their consumption of animals. Buying cruelty-free toothpaste, eating less meat, eating no meat, and so on. So once we reduce the demand for these products, then that'll be a big step forward.
Yeah, and, of course, my mind's going into the future again, but I do sense that there's gonna be some generation that comes onto the planet that at a young age, they start to really see it, and
Yeah.
as opposed to just keep doing what, mom and dad and Uncle Joe taught me. It can't just be a few souls on the planet that see this at a young age. I mean, I know that I admitted I went to the rodeo and I didn't see a lot of things, but I was aware I was aware enough as a child that I started questioning early, and there were some things I could see, some things I couldn't see. So that's some progress.
Mhm.
But I just feel like there's gotta be some kids that, given, putting the right kind of teaching, the right kind of education or something in front of them, that they can make the connection. For example, my husband just sent our family a video. It was so cute. All these kids all lined up, like, they looked like they were all 3rd graders or something, and every year, I guess some duck mom has babies in the school, and the duck comes out, and all the ducklings are following her, and all the kids are lined up, and they're so quiet, and it's so cute, and they're so excited, and I'm thinking the first thought I had in my mind is, "Okay, the next thing is for them to connect that they're eating mommies and babies in their lunchbox." Like, if somebody could help them make the connection that their little chicken sandwich or, turkey sandwich or whatever it is the same as that little duckling, or that mama duck and those ducklings in just a few weeks, that might change for them.
Yes, and I think that when we are showing kids anything like that, giving them that experience, or when we are photojournalists giving people the experience through an image, we do need to handhold and talk about next steps. I used to believe that I could hold up an image of cruelty and someone would say, "That's terrible, I'm never taking part in that." That's not how it works. I've learned that time and time again. But the what's next, the context, the possibilities within images, and the possibility for those children. So after they crouched down and they saw, you know, the mom and her kids, were they taught that their lives are sacred and they deserve
Yeah.
respect, compassion, and autonomy? Or were they taught, now we're going to sit down and eat these animals because that's what we do? And some of the kids might cry and be
Yes.
uncomfortable, but it's like, you're going to do this because this is what we do. So, what were they taught after that? And,
Yes.
some of,
Yeah.
yeah, and they're all going to take something different from it depending on who they are and who their parents are. And
Yeah, that's really true, and to get back full circle to what I said in the beginning, I believe that some people are just born psychopaths, but it's rare. Most children just really love the duckling, just really love the baby rabbit, just really want to go towards him or her and pet them and love them and hold the chicken and the lamb. And they're not getting their teeth out and biting into their neck. That's just not what our nature is. And so to me, the spiritual path is a path of finding our authentic nature. It really is restoring ourselves to our nature. And I do think that our nature, less all of the conditioning, less all of the systems overlaid upon us, is to love and be kind and to care for animals. And that's why your work is so important. And I'm just so glad that you've been on today, so graciously sharing your life. I do want to give you a chance to share anything else that you might want to share before we close.
hmm, there's not much more I want to share. It's been a really nice conversation, and I think we've covered some important ground about
I,
my
I do,
yeah, my
yeah.
beliefs and what we're trying to do at We Animals. Um, We Animals is a very rich place where you can find stories and films on all sorts of topics. So I do encourage people to go check out the website, the Instagram, and the YouTube. It's all, if you look for We Animals or weanimals.org, you'll find it there. It's a great resource for information, and one of the best things we do is put out all of those photos for people to look at and to use. Kids in grade 2 use that as a resource for their projects and academics, and they're used at the policy level as well. And those images have been shown in the European Parliament and, all over the world. So please feel free to use our resources. And I think I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, we'll have links to all of that on the show notes, and I do think your book. Show it once more. This is one of 3 books, but, it is a book you can put on your coffee table. It's not a book you need to hide away, because they are stories. You are a storyteller, and telling the stories of this particular animal or the system that we're stuck in, it's an important story to tell. So, thank you so much for your work and for also sharing some of your spiritual practices of, mindfulness and staying connected to the present moment and putting your thoughts, controlling your thoughts, which is very, very important. And just recognizing that every day is the day that we can do something about. I mean, that's really, really good advice for people. So thank you so much, Jo-Anne, for being with us. You're going to love the 50s decade. It's a great decade. Relish every moment of it.
I think it's going to be my best.
It's gonna be your best.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you everyone for joining us, and I now close the Spiritual Forum.
Mm.
Thanks for listening. If you like what you've heard here, hit the subscribe button, leave a comment, or a rating and review on Apple Podcasts. You can also sign up for my weekly newsletter or make a donation to support this work at thespiritualforum.org. Tune in every week, and remember, you are a divine creation, perfect and whole, just as you are.